Backstory: I manage my landlord's IT services in exchange for a couple dollars off my rent. Occasionally, standing up a server, or converting systems to VMware, etc. I live in an apartment split in a single family home with one guy who is on a separate level apartment. My neighbor continuously has been making noise at 1-3:30 am, whether it's hammering, vacuuming, or knocking on my door complaining. My landlord asked him to stop, but after a knock around 3:30 complaining how the internet is slow, I heard it. The second time I've awoke due to him knocking on my door in the past 24 hours. I've effing had it. I logged onto our router last week and blocked all the porn and pettiness. This time I blocked his devices from connecting period until he grows up. It's always him cussing in a drunken rampage at insane hours in the AM. I went to knock on his door around 7 am to tell him to F off, and we are having internet problems. I'll turn it back on sometime. Next time I'm gonna route his traffic through something and cause a 1-second delay in his streaming. Tonight I went out with my teacher and a few other students to celebrate us all passing our super hard app college credit equivalent test. We went to a Japanese style restaurant, and for context our waiter was in fact Japanese. We all ordered a lot of food and we were having a great time when I overheard our waiter talking to another waiter in Japanese. He said, "That blonde girl is so fat she shouldn't have ordered all that food." As you can guess by now, I understood what he was saying because I speak Japanese. In fact, everyone at my table speaks Japanese because our teacher is our Japanese teacher, and the test we all passed was our app Japanese language test. My teacher noticed I was just picking at my food and asked what was wrong. I told my teacher, and I was upset at first about having been called fat. He must have overheard it too and was hoping I hadn't heard it. He assured me that some people are just rude and that I can eat all I want because we're all celebrating. Everyone else had ordered a lot of food for themselves too. I was still a little bothered though, and so I hatched my little plan. The rude waiter came back and asked us all how everything was. I spoke up and said, "It's great. We're celebrating and the food is perfect for us celebrating." He replied, "Oh, that's great. What are you all celebrating?" To which I said, in Japanese, "We are all celebrating our passing test scores on our college Japanese language exams." His face was beautiful. That look of realization and the glance over the table at my smiling peers and my sensei holding in his laughter. However, the waiter did not apologize for what he had said, so I didn't leave him a tip on my meal. Everyone else did. On this, on the back of my receipt I wrote, "Please think before you speak out loud." Okay, this may not be the best petty revenge story, but it sure makes me feel better. Plus my peers and sensei got a kick out of it. Seeing a post just recently about a lady speaking back in Japanese to a rude waiter reminded me of something that happened several years ago. My friends and I were at lunch at work. About 3 of us were deaf out of 8 of us. We were talking and getting by just fine. I glanced across from me, this young couple looking at us. I caught the lady speaking quietly, lip read her, to the guy saying, "It's funny how deaf people talk. So stupid." I wasn't very far from her, so I said out loud to my group, "That some hearing people don't get, that deafers can read lips. So stupid." After that, I quickly glanced at them with a glare. They were red in the face and walked off. For context, I'm sitting in a booth of one of those hipster coffee shops. I'm already a little irked because we tried ordering something basic, hot chocolate, only to be told that they aren't able to make them today. So I quickly chose an alternative, something just as basic, chai latte, but they again said their steam wander's broken, so their menu is reduced down to practically nothing. That aside, I ended up just not ordering any drinks other than my overpriced breakfast, so I can just focus on studying. Our booth neighbor decides to pound their feet against the floorboards for a long time. Since our booths are raised and sharing these floorboards, I can hear and feel everything. So I wanted to test out whether it would be the same for us. I began drumming out a strong beat on the floor with my heeled mules. Lo and behold, my neighbor's pounding stopped. But not mine. I figured they have given me permission to continue drumming on for the next hour or so, because what are they going to do? Ask me to stop? Try me, neighbor. I'm here for the entire day, and I got this beat in my head still going strong. Edit. I'll write out answers, since there were people who went wild with their speculations. 1. It was a coffee shop. No, not a restaurant. Not an old folks community home. Not a bowling alley. A coffee shop. Like many in this style, there's only a small handful of options. So 23 of the menu was out. People were angry because the shop could have easily put up a sign, so they didn't have to wait in a long line to be told that most of their menu is unavailable. 2. Everybody there was studying or doing work. It's a place for it. People either come and go, or they're planting themselves down for a while. There's free Wi-Fi, no time limit, and most of buy something every few hours, if they stay longer. I'm a regular like many of the customers were. 3. I wasn't pissed at staff. WTF. People are allowed to feel feelings as a response to a poorly organized setup when things go wrong and there's no system in place, right? Never once did I take that out on the staff. 4. I was being a dick to the booth neighbor. That's why I posted here. Being petty alludes to unnecessary or trivial behavior. Maybe readers are accustomed to siding with the writer, but if the writer is being petty to begin with, you're only going off of what you're told anyway. Sorry you didn't get the cathartic release you came for, but I was petty and I posted. Fresh from the press, I took the family out to a sort of fun fair occasion, end of summer kinda thing. One of the attractions they had there was an inflatable ball pit which had little cones of air on which you could put one of the balls from the pit, and it would float. Concept is similar to one of these. https www.inflatables.co.uk/bouncy_castle_sales what content uploads 201,501 img_8925.jpg. My kids and I were having a good time until some brat started annoying my oldest kid, heretofore to be known as Kiddo. Kiddo is not an introvert or a loner by any sense of the word, but takes some time to open up before playing with stranger kids. Kiddo kept putting balls up on these little cones and was getting insanely excited about how it works and trying to figure it out. Science, beaches, when Brat decided that the only thing he wanted to do was get in Kiddo's way. Every time Kiddo would put a ball up, Brat would knock it down. At first Kiddo tried playing together with Brat, cause that's how we roll in this house, but Brat was having none of it. He was being, as his name would suggest, a brat. If Kiddo tried taking turns with Brat, Brat would monopolize the whole cone and not give Kiddo the chance to play as well. I'm a fan of letting my kids learn from experience, so I stayed nearby just to see how Kiddo would play this out. Eventually, Kiddo realized that there would be no peace with Brat and moved one cone over so each kid could play with their own. Cool, right? I thought that showed some pretty decent maturity on Kiddo's part, and I couldn't wait to tell mom how grown up Kiddo was being. Then Brat decided that being a brat on one cone wasn't enough. He was going to follow Kiddo to the new cone. When Kiddo moved again, Brat was right behind, keeping up with the shenanigans. At this point I stepped in and told Kiddo that I was proud of them, but maybe it would be better to move a few cones over and give Brat some space. At the same time, I looked for Brat's parents, but there were no Karen-like figures to be seen, and when I asked, no one had seen Brat's parents. So I told him to leave Kiddo alone and stay on his own turf. Kiddo quickly forgot about Brat and continued playing with the new cones while I spent the next 20 minutes throwing balls every time Brat would put one of his balls to balance on a cone, knocking his balls off. I'm positive he saw me, but I was just getting Kiddo's revenge, and since Karen was nowhere to be found, who was Brat gonna tell? Mom loved the story by the way, earned me a high five when she heard. Background. My partner, F, 30, and I, M, 34, live with my biological son, 4, his mother and I are divorced. We live about 3 hours away from the rest of my family. This revenge story involves my cousin, let's call her Susan, F, 37, and her 2 boys, 5 and 7. I don't have a very close relationship with Susan, but she and I got along well enough. My nephews are overall decent kids, but like many boys their age can be a handful, especially when combined together with my son. Because we live 3 hours away, Susan and I used see each other about once or twice a year during major holidays. However, at the beginning of this year, Susan's husband got a job as a ship's mechanic, so he would often be away 2, 3, sometimes up to 8 weeks at a time. Since then, Susan has been driving down and dropping in on us about once or twice a month. She would often give us very little notice and stay for 2 to 3 days at a time. While I don't mind seeing Susan and her boys, she was definitely starting to wear out her welcome. While she stays with us, Susan never does any cleaning, grocery shopping, cooking, or contributes to the household. She barely even looks after her boys, preferring to sit on the couch or her guest bed on her phone. This leaves my partner and I the responsibility of cooking, cleaning for 3 additional people, and also babysitting. The 3 boys would run around the house, and when I ask my cousin to look in on them, she ignores me and says, "Oh, they're just boys having fun. It's fine. Don't be such a tiger parent." When she does get off her but to look after her boys, she just gives them an iPad each. My partner and I are trying to limit the screen time of our son, but it's kind of unfair to restrict his screen time while his cousins are constantly on this. So then we're forced then to take the boys outside ourselves to play. Susan declines to join us, she's too tired as a single mother. Basically, she treats my home as a source of free accommodation, free meals, and free childcare. My partner and I grew up in households where we were taught to look after our guests, especially if they're family. So we just took Susan's laziness in stride for a while. The straw that finally broke the camel's back happened about 10 weeks ago. Susan and her boys were staying over, but the youngest boy was obviously sick. During the night he got up and vomited all over our guest bathroom. In the morning, Susan used our bathroom to get ready and then left shortly after. As I was getting around to cleaning up after her, changing sheets, vacuuming etc., I saw the horrendous vomit-strewn state Susan had left for us to clean. I called Susan and angrily told her off. Her reply was, "I'm a guest and I have to deal with a sick kid. Why don't you stop whining and just clean it?" I lost my crap at her and told her to F off and never come back. She tried to call me, told on me to my parents and her parents for swearing. She eventually sent me a text apologizing. I knew she only wanted to fix our relationship because she wanted to continue to use my house as an Airbnb and free childcare, so I ignored her for about 2 months. Then last week I decided to take revenge. I had a reunion with my high school friends in her city. So 2 days before, I called her and told her that I'm sorry about everything that's happened and that we will always be family. She eagerly jumped at the chance to make amends, thinking that her trips up to our house can start again. Then one day before my reunion, I called her and asked if I can stay overnight at her house. She sounded reluctant, but had no credible way of refusing given that we had made up. That night, I got horrendously drunk and had a great time with my friends. I got back to her place in the early hours and, using a toothbrush, made sure that I threw up all in her sink and bathtub. I then left immediately and got on a red-eye bus back home. The next morning she blew up my phone trying to call me, sending me angry texts etc. Eventually, I answered and innocently asked, "Hi Susan, what's wrong? F you, clean up your spew you a-hole." I smiled, "But cousin, I'm the guest and I have to look after my hangover self. Why don't you stop whining and just clean it?" I then hung up. My cousin and I haven't talked since. Thank you for watching. Slap that like button and comment your opinion on these stories below. I'm waiting. Write that comment. Seriously. Have you written it yet? If you don't comment, you make a bunny cry somewhere. You're not that kind of person. I know. Anyways, peace out and catch you tomorrow.